What's good, YouTube? Sensational Sincere is here, and I'm back with another Tom Clancy's The Division vendor reset video. We're here for July 24th, 2020's vendor reset. So let's get right into this to see what we got good for this week. For our first gear items, you want to head over to Camp Hudson. Here, the weapons vendor has an M249B with a gear score of 269. It has 22% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents it has deadly, fierce, and talented. And also here we got a loud bend break with 19% crit hit damage, 2% accuracy, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Hudson. The gear vendor here has a Spec Ops mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 261. The armor is 870. Its roll for firearms 1,156. And the attributes it has is health on kill and increased kill XP. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 5.50% first aid self-heal. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the meat locker. Here, the weapons vendor has a SASG-12 with a gear score of 276. It has 308.50% stagger, and the talents it has is dominant, deadly, and fierce. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the base of operations. Here, the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Black Market AK-74 with a gear score of 267. It has 23% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is prepared, brutal, and ferocious. Also here we got a Spec Ops mask with the talent enduring on there. It has a gear score of 274. The armor is 961. Its roll for electronics 1,181. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage and damage to elites. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the weapons vendor, and here we got a Black Market M60E6 with a gear score of 266. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents this has is accurate, adept, and vicious. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the gear vendor here, and we got a tactical mask with the talent enduring on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 909. Its roll for stamina 1,160. And the attributes this has is crit chance and burn resistance. And also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 266 electronics and 1% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the advanced weaponry vendor, and here we got a G36 enhanced with a gear score of 278. It has 20% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is adept, predatory, and focused. Also here we got a SASG-12 with a gear score of 273. It has 321% stagger, and the talents it has is unforgiving, ferocious, and self-preserved. Also here we got a Model 700 with a gear score of 278. It has 147% headshot damage, and the talents it has is disciplined, determined, and elevated. Also here we got a tactical M249 Para with a gear score of 266. It has 18% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is prepared, destructive, and talented. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to a special equipment vendor, and here we got a Pecan. If you like to run this weapon, it has a gear score of 266. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is unforgiving, destructive, and Pecan. Also here we got a Cassidy with a gear score of 263. It has 333% stagger, and the talents it has is vicious, trained, and boomstick. Also here we got a Black Market AK-74 with a gear score of 270. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents this one has is prepared, intense, and fierce. Also here we got an operator mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 270. The armor is 930. Its roll for stamina 1,233, and the attributes this has is crit chance and disorientant resistance. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3.50% turret damage. Also here we got an extended magazine with 116% magazine size, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 4% crit hit damage. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a firearms knee pad blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got an MK4 M5A2 scope times 15 blueprint with a power level 34. And we also got a flash hider blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the Cavern. Here, the gear vendor has a tactical vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 1,815. Its roll for stamina 1,127. And the attributes this has is exotic damage resilience, health on kill, and increased kill XP. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Camp Clinton. Here, the special equipment vendor has a Pecan. If you like to run this weapon, this one has a gear score of 265. It has 20% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents this has is deadly, destructive, and Pecan. We also got a Historian here with a gear score of 272. It has 153% headshot damage, and the talents it has is brutal, destructive, and Historian repeats. Also here we got a classic M60 with a gear score of 265. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents it has is vicious, ferocious, and predatory. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 1,852. Its roll for firearms 1,169. And the attributes this has is health, skill, haste, and ammo capacity. Also here we got a prototype firearms mod with 257 firearms and 1% crit hit chance. Also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 12% magazine size, 3% crit hit chance, and 9.50% rate of fire. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Clinton. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a surplus SVD blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a vertical grip foliage green blueprint with a power level 34. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Dante's Run. Here the gear vendor is the operator vest with the talent vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 262. The armor is 1,736. Its roll for firearms 1,139. And the attributes this has is all resistance, exotic damage resilience, and increased kill XP. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Wolves Den. Here the weapons vendor has a G36C with a gear score of 264. It has 20% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is responsive, unforgiving, and focused. And also here we got a reflex sight with 7% crit hit chance, 4% optimal range, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Autumn's Hope. Here the gear vendor has a prototype performance mod with 5.50% first aid ally heal. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to Madison Stand. Here the gear vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 201 stamina and 3% damage to elites. And also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 260 electronics and 3,069 health. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the ward. Here the gear vendor has an operator vest with the talent vigorous on there. It has a gear score of 278. The armor is 1,979. Its roll for stamina 1,207. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, all resistance, and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the firewall. Here the gear vendor has a tactical pack with the talent inventive on there. It has a gear score of 274. The armor is 1,228. Its roll for firearms 1,229. And the attributes this has is health and burn resistance. Also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 194 electronics and 3% damage to elites. And I mention this because I'm here. We got a prototype performance mod with 2.50% smart cover damage resilience. For our next gear items, we're going to head to the West 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical pack with the talent inventive on there. It has a gear score of 263. The armor is 1,198. Its roll for stamina 1,132. And the attributes this has is skill power and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, we're going to head to the West 39th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an operator pack with the talent specialized on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 1,243. Its roll for stamina 1,206. And the attributes this has is crit damage and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 263 stamina and 1% crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has extended magazine with 113% magazine size, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 5.40% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 64th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone gear mod vendor has a prototype performance mod with 2% post crit hit damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 58th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 273. The armor is 1,197. Its roll for electronics 1,229. And the attributes this has is crit damage and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the Park Ave checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a Super 90 with a gear score of 264. It has 334.50% stagger. And the talents this has is accurate, competent, and fierce. Also here we got a Paratrooper SVD with a gear score of 263. It has 151% headshot damage, and the talents this has is ferocious, fierce, and discipline. And also here we got a Black Market RPK 74E with a gear score of 265. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is ferocious, adept, and predatory. For our next gear items, we're going to enter East 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an Omega Rifle Suppressor with 17% headshot damage, 4% crit hit damage, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 40th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has an M700 Tactical with a gear score of 265. It has 172% headshot damage, and the talents it has is fierce, prepared, and elevated. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 3% smart cover damage resilience. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to East 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a military RPK 74M with a gear score of 276. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is determined, vicious, and destructive. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to the 5th Ave checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a G36C with a gear score of 263. It has 22% enemy armor damage, and the talent list has a swift, prepared, and focused. And also we got a prototype performance mod with 2% pulse crit hit chance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ2 safe room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 884. Its roll for firearms 1125. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, blind death resistance. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 1991. Its roll for firearms 1131. And the attributes this has is skill haste, health on kill, and increased kill XP. Also here we got a Spec Ops pack with the talent Specialized on there. It has a gear score of 266. The armor is 1164. Its roll for stamina 1211. And the attributes this has is skill power and disrupt resistance. And also here we got some Spec Ops gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 271. The armor is 929. Its roll for electronics 1123. And the attributes this has is skill haste, pistol damage, and crit hit damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to DZ3 safe room. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a black market M60E6 with a gear score of 262. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is ferocious, vicious, and competent. For our next gear items, we're going to head over to DZ5 safe room. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has a VX1 scope times 12 with 18.50% headshot damage, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 4% crit hit damage. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ8 safe room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 279. The armor is 938. Its roll for stamina 1246. And the attributes this has is all resistance and increased kill XP. Also here we got an operator vest with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 1842. Its roll for firearms 1115. And the attributes this has is all resistance, health, and ammo capacity. Also here we got an operator pack with the talent Inventive on there. It has a gear score of 267. The armor is 1175. Its roll for stamina 1146. And the attributes this has is health and burn resistance. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ9 safe room. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has a heavy magazine spring with 4% crit hit damage, 2.50% crit hit chance, and 9.40% rate of fire. Also here we got a large suppressor FDE with 18% crit hit damage, 2% accuracy, and 6% headshot damage. Alright everybody, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division vendor reset video for July 24th, 2020's vendor reset. I hope everybody who tuned into it found them something that they needed. Smash out that like and sub button if you hadn't. I appreciate that support. Check me out on Twitch. I stream on there sometimes. And I'll see y'all with the next one, everybody. Take care. Peace.